This is Cult Connections presents Cult Confessions. Every episode, your host Ian, that's me, is joined by a new guest to discuss a classic film. The only thing is, Ian is only now getting round to watching them, from the scariest horrors to hilarious comedies and everything in between. So come and enjoy Ian's Cult Confessions. Hello, and welcome back to my occasional series, Cult Confessions. And today I'm joined by Sean. So it is a good morning there to you, Sean. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I am very well. I am very well indeed. And today's a slight change to the format I would usually use for this, because we are talking about a film that neither of us had watched up until just a few weeks ago. So today it's all about Howls Moving Castle from 2004. But I think, Sean, you've been sort of nagged about this one a little bit about not having seen it.
Oh, definitely. Everybody I know has seen it, but me. I travel in a lot of anime circles. There's a lot of I know a lot of people that are huge on anime. People that have subscriptions to. There's a channel called Crunchyroll. There's a Funimation, like all these different streaming services, and my friends subscribe to all of them. And I'm the person that doesn't watch any of this stuff. So
Yeah. And I must admit, I am there a bit like that, and because I really haven't watched any either. Um, so they're hands up there for both of us. You know, this is a first for us, and I think, and to be fair, after watching the film for the first time, we were both like, why hadn't we watched it sooner? I think we were both like,
definitely.
this is really really great, and we should have dipped our their toes in the anime water a lot there sooner. Um, I'm just wondering, for you, Sean, was there a particular reason why maybe anime is not something that you've watched, or?
I think honestly it's the animation style that I wasn't big on. Um I mean, I grew up with, you brought this up on your show before, like the animated X-Men, the animated Spider-Man series, like from the 90s, I guess it was. And like that's the animation I grew up on, kind of American style animation. And that was my all. I grew up on Disney, uh, you know, Fox and the Hound and Cinderella and all that sort of stuff. Like, so this animation is so different and so bizarre for me that I just couldn't get into it. And then there's lots of things about the animation style that I'd see little bits here and there, and I just kind of get lost and just not understand where they would have this lush animation with these mega cartoonish faces with these kind of eyes that kind of jump out, and I couldn't wrap my head around the style. It
Mm-hmm.
just couldn't do it.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I think for me, certainly for sort of Japanese animation, my only real prior knowledge is like yourself. I'm going back to their childhood, and in the wake of their Star Wars, any sort of science fiction thing would be um, jumped upon. And one of the big things in the Britain in the early the 80s was the Battle of the Planet, which is a
Oh,
Japanese
yep.
show. Yeah. So that was shown a lot. I used to love it. I thought it was, really, really great.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
familiar with that. I did watch that. I will admit I did watch that one. It was great. I loved that thing.
yeah. What's interesting about that one though is that it's an adaptation of obviously a the Japanese show, because it's dubbed. I think actually that the Japanese version their stories actually very, very different to what we get.
Hmm.
So that the storylines and the dialogue are are very, very different. The characters aren't even called the same names and things like
Yeah.
that. And yeah, and to they sort of cash in on their Star Wars, they put in their robot. So their Seven Zark Seven is that was actually animated separately by um the whoever the American um uh their sort of company who they took it on. So they made these separately, and then they
I
added them
did
in.
not know that. I did not
Yeah,
know that.
yeah.
That's fascinating.
Um, so it goes there to show you. I think there is a. I think if you're not, familiar with, anime or sort of Japanese, television or their cinema, then, I think there is a definite, culture gap there as well. I think it's, unless you do sort of dive in, you would maybe struggle really there to get it.
I think so. Because I mean, the culture is so different. I mean, I live in North America, so in North America, our culture is very young. Like it's very young. So I think there's a breadth of history there that I'm just not getting. And in Japanese culture, it's just so rich and so dense. And I've been watching more Japanese films, not animated, and just really kind of getting into that and just apologize. That's the wake the kids up alarm, but they're already awake. But there's like watching this film, I'm like, okay, now I'm seeing it. Like I'm just watching with open eyes and just kind of okay. There's a level of depth that you can't really get in North American cinema, and you probably couldn't get in a live action film because in animation you can do so much more. You're not limited by a budget in the same way as you would like a Star Wars film because So I don't know. It's interest. It's super interesting.
Yeah. So what um the sort of Japanese films have you watched? What kind of things have you been?
Well, just and I guess not just Japanese, but I've been looking at a lot of different things from different cultures to kind of. I was watching some Bollywood stuff. And what's that one? There's oh my god, I forgot now. The boy that's on the boat and there's a tiger and
All right, yeah.
oh my god,
Yep.
I can't remember what it's called, but I think you know the one I mean. It
I
was
do know the one you
fantastic
mean,
film.
and the name of it has left my head as well, and I'm sure people they're listening will be shouting at
Oh yeah, it's
their
this film.
speakers just now. It's that one. Um,
Um,
it,
that one, I read this book a few. Like I do have a big interest in it in India, particularly. I'm not sure why. It's just the culture is incredibly fascinating. But I'm trying to think. Like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was one that
hmm
my wife and I saw that in theaters, which isn't something we would normally go see, but we saw it and we're
hmm
like, this is so much richer than North American cinema. They're like, there's so much. And I kind of wanted to know more, but I've always been a fan of like the Jackie Chan films and and stuff like that. Um, but I'm trying to improve the content of what I'm watching, but I never did the animated side of things.
Yeah, 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 and I'm quite similar. So, the odd their live action their film. So certainly,
Life of
uh,
Pi, that's what it was.
Life
Life of
of Pi.
Pi.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. People can stop shouting at their speakers now because it is indeed Life of Pi. um, yeah, but for me, I think um, the they're sort of kaiju films, so obviously uh, they Godzilla, some of those,
Oh yeah,
growing up. I mean, they would be on.
sure.
Um, I'm actually quite sort of disappointed how many you can't actually get in an English version, which is a shame. Because I would probably end up, buying most of those, um, just for the sake of it, you know. Um, but it's funny actually. I watched the Japanese film just there last night. So this is one from 1980 called The Virus, um, and it's a big film. It's a big epic film. So it's a 2.5 hours long, um, with a a a sort of mixed Japanese and their American their cast, and it's
Oh,
actually it's a
interesting.
very grim their film. It's about the man-made virus that basically wipes out the most of the world. So it's a big epic. Um, their sort of disaster film in a way. It's very much that the genre. The director who made it went on to do Battle the Royale, which is a favourite of mine, which is a very good film. I
Battle
don't know if you've
Royale.
seen that one. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the one I was trying to. I couldn't remember what it was called, but
yeah,
that's I love that film. That film is
yeah,
great.
yeah. It is. So, I mean, there are some. Yeah, so there's some. I think there's some films that obviously sort of translate quite, quite there well, and maybe others that they don't. I haven't really dipped my toes into the horror um, the genre over there yet, but there I'm
Oh
sure I
yeah,
will. I've watched the odd one, but
you've probably watched the Americanized versions of some of those, I'm sure.
well, yeah, well that's it again. Yeah, it's like
Thing, The Conjuring, like all those ones. Like,
yeah, but so
how do the
yeah, I
Americans
haven't.
keep taking over all that stuff and trying to make it like as if it's going to be better? I don't understand.
Well, I don't know if you have seen Train to the Busan, which is the Korean film. Um,
No, I haven't yet. Is
okay, well
it good?
that's a great film. Yeah, so that's um,
I'm making a
basically.
list right now.
So to sum it up, that is zombies on a train. Uh, However, it's a lot better than what that sounds like. It's not their snakes on a plane, that's for sure. Uh, it is a
There's no
great
Samuel
film.
Jackson
No,
cursing
no,
people.
no. Um, it is, however, a great film, and but yeah, apparently there will be a the English language, remake of it, and I'm like, why?
But why? Why? There's no need.
No.
So the
Uh,
one thing I did want to bring up, which is kind of interesting, is I'm not sure what your Netflix is like out there, but I know on our end we have a lot of international films on our Netflix, tons, just
mhm.
tons. And I've been kind of because we watched Howls. I'm like, okay, I think I gotta find and kind of define it by the region. Like I want to watch some Chinese stuff. I want to watch some Japanese stuff, some Korean, and just see if what differences there are in each, and see if they're I don't know the genres are a little bit more this way or that way, just to kind of see how things work out. But I've been starting to earmark a bunch to watch.
Yeah.
Does your Netflix have a lot of international content as well?
Yeah, yeah. It certainly does. I think I know what you mean as well. I think although what I find there difficult is to watch stuff that's not for the podcast. So I might just have to schedule some more anime their sort of episodes just so I can sit down and watch them, which
Well,
is fine. But
I do have a filter a filter person who I do have I do share a subscription to something to an anime one. with my best buddy, and he's like, okay, some of this stuff you're not going to want to watch. It's overly sexualized or whatever.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
he's filtering. Okay, don't watch that one. Watch this one. So I've got a few, and I did start My Hero Academia, which which was great actually. I've watched. There's I don't know how many seasons, but my wife and I are 2 seasons in. So he's like, don't watch that because I if something's overly sexualized in a film, it's just I don't know. It to me it takes away from the film if that's all
Yeah.
that it's about.
Hmm.
So he's kind of like, okay, he's kind of guiding my our viewing of what we're gonna watch. So that is the other anime that we've watched was My Hero Academia, which is very very interesting.
Good. Oh well, I'm glad you've got someone there to guide you through it as well. I think that's yeah, haha. And like you say, I think it's so vast that you can. Yeah, I think if you maybe don't watch watch things from the start, which will really sort of grip you. You know, if you maybe go down the wrong road for you, then you might just never get it actually, and that would be a shame because I think lots of really good stuff would probably sort of pass you by.
No, no, exactly. Like if your introduction to American cinema was a really bad Nicolas Cage film and you never seen an American film before, you might be turned you might be turned off, right? Like it's kind of the same. It'd be the same thing.
Or to be fair, they're sort of Nicolas Cage. If you'd never watched a good film of his, then I think
Yeah,
that would also yeah.
you'd think he's just atrocious, but he is a
Yeah.
genius.
Oh dear. I know that there are lots of fans, and I like him as well, I must admit, but yeah, he's got a fair amount of absolute their rubbish.
Oh yeah,
So but anyway, so for us, Howl's moving their castle. So like I say, came out in there 2004. The Netflix, sorry, the IMDb, their synopsis doesn't really do it their sort of justice, but it 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 does say when an unconfident young their woman is cursed with an old lady's their body by a spiteful witch, her only chance of breaking the spell lies with a self indulgent yet insecure young their wizard and his companions in his legged walking castle. And that really doesn't sum up the film at all that well.
horrible.
Um, but it's a their fantasy world. It is one. It's not. There are things we can um they relate to, but it's not our world either.
No,
Certainly, but I must admit, and one real strength of the film is that it captured me quite sort of quickly. I felt, oh, I like this world. It really sort of caught uh, caught the um the attention really right from the start.
yeah, yeah, the same here. It was. I'm like, okay, what's going on? What like I kept asking all these questions in my head and trying to piece together like what's happening. There's this young girl. She's running a shop, and there's this kind of war thing in the background, and there's like all these things, and I was I was immediately in, and I watched it with my 7-year-old, which was interesting because I'm like, this might be a bad parent judgment call here. Like I wasn't sure how adult the film was going to
Mm.
be,
Uh-huh.
but interestingly enough, despite a cultural difference, we were both right in. Like my 7-year-old just like, who that girl is pretty. What is she doing? And who's like she was just like she was locked right in, and I was locked in, and I'm a 50-year-old man, so that says something. Just the whole layup, like or the layout of the opening of the film. and just the way it moves is like we're like totally in.
Yeah. I think for me, I was, because I really did know nothing about it. I knew nothing about their story or the background to it. Um, so when it
And
started,
neither
and I,
did IMDb. Apparently, they didn't know what the movie was about either.
to be fair, I think it's difficult to sum up in just a couple of sentences. But
True, true.
um, um, I think for me, like, because I was expecting maybe a sort of Eastern um, Asian set their film, I was maybe thinking it would be in say the Japan or sort of Asia, maybe a bit more widely. So when it started, and we get a very there's sort of a um, this sort of European actually world. I mean, it looks like sort of
Yeah.
Europe. Um the train. There was a scene with the steam um uh, the sort of train, and I was immediately thinking this is this sort of Britain in
Mhm.
say the 50s or somewhere like that. And then a lot of the stylizations, I was very much, this is Europe. It very much felt like that.
Yeah, I had that same feeling too. It's like it's our world. Where is it in our world? But it was broad enough that I don't know. Like maybe it has appeal to different regions of the planet. Like well, that's kind of familiar to me, or that's familiar to me. It didn't feel specifically Japanese,
No.
which I don't know. Like to do that, that's pretty good writing.
Hmm. Hmm. I think what we have to recognise is that, I mean, it is based on the book, so it is the Diana Wynne, the Jones, who is the English, the
Yes,
author.
yes,
And I would imagine that the book itself is in a sort of British stroke, this sort of
yep.
European, this sort of world. I certainly got that sort of sense about it. Um, I think what maybe helped as well is that the characters. So for the faces, so there is that anime style there to the faces, with
Yep,
the larger eyes and
yep.
things like that. Um, but they maybe don't look as the Asian as maybe what other sort of anime films they do. It's maybe
Sure.
slightly softened a little bit.
I think so. Yeah. But I'm not like I'm really curious to see his other films because I'm wondering if this was just for this one or if this is kind of a standard. Like I'm making films for everyone. It's not going to be a specifically Japanese cast. It's going to be a bit more wider
Hmm.
in range.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's interesting because I mean he does. So it's now please excuse my their pronunciation. So it's Hayao Miyazaki. I
Yep.
hope that's right. Um, Now he has made. I mean, his the credits are amazingly they're lengthy, but he has made the likes of the Spirited, the Away, and the Princess, the Mononoke, which I do know are big films. Are really well they thought of their films. I know that there are a couple of people have actually urged me to watch their Spirited.
Yes.
They're away afterwards, so I will certainly be there doing that one. I will be
When,
delving in
when
there
I
to
told
that one as well.
when I told people this is the one we were doing, they're like, "You're going to do that film from him? Like, why that one?" And I'm like, I don't know." But yeah, Spirited Away
Because
was
we
brought
don't
up.
know any better. That's why.
That's exactly. But I was told Spirited Away is we're like, what are you doing? Like, you should have started with that one. So I didn't want to watch it just yet, but that's probably the next one I'll go to.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's on my watch list. So yeah, that will be getting there done. Um, yeah, you're right though. I think as well. There is a style there. There is a there's probably a I think like every film, there's probably rules there to it that you have to do things in a certain way, or that's what's maybe thought of about they're about him. Um, it's interesting. What I would like to talk about is how we watched it. Now I know, Sean, you watched the subtitled version first. Is that right?
Well, I watched the dubbed version
Aha.
with the subtitles on as well. So
Right. Okay.
I was kind of doing both at the same time because
Aha.
I think I wanted to be hyper aware because I was watching with my daughter, so I wanted to be hyper aware of because I do read kind of fast. So I'm like, if there's something untoward that's about to happen, I can
Okay.
maybe pause the movie really quick,
Uh-huh.
you know, and maybe shield her from something that might not be okay for her to watch because I mean she is only 7, so
Yeah.
but so I did both. So the American voice, like the American actor voices, like the big names, and
Aha.
then with the subtitle on the bottom.
Right. Okay. Okay.
How
So
did you how did you do it?
well, I watched the dubbed version first, so no subtitles on my first watch. Um, However, on my second, I went with the Japanese audio with the subtitles,
Okay.
and I must admit, I think I think for me, I liked the 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 sort of Japanese version because what I found was because I had to read the subtitles, I was actually looking at the film there more.
Hmm.
So, dare I say it, with the dub version, I could find myself sort of, glancing off every so often,
Sure.
or even dare I say it, looking at my phone. So that should always be sort of cast away when you're watching a film. But I found actually there that the Japanese version um, caught me a lot more. I think just because I was actually watching the screen all of the time.
Right.
Yeah, haha.
Yeah, I noticed that the it didn't sync and I don't mean from a it was the way the film was put together was wrong from a technical standpoint, but the words were not matching what the actors were saying a lot, and that was kind of interesting to me. It was like, okay, so like I don't know if it changed the story dramatically, but it changed the nuance of particular scenes. I don't know if I have an example right away, but certain things were deeper in certain scenes by what was written versus what the actors were doing. And I was
Uh-huh.
really curious, like on your version, if because you watched it twice,
Yeah.
was there did certain scenes have more weight without the
Yeah,
American
haha.
voices?
They d- I would say yeah, I would say the subtitled version, so the Japanese dub it, it was more moving in a way.
Hmm.
And it probably made me think a bit more. Um, about what was sort of going on as well. Um, and I think also listening to voices that especially people who have done lots of this sort of animation, it maybe lends a different feel there to the film as well. So, um, and I think that the voice works fine. I didn't really have any issue apart from one. There's a one voice which I found quite sort of jarring, and I was like, uh, but I also recognised the voice. So that's Billy,
Immediately.
the sort of Crystal. they're a couple. He's the fire, the sort of spirit that lights up their castle, and but it was like out of a Disney film or out of a Pixar film. It's like oh there's Mike the Wazowski. He's sitting in the fire. Uh, and it's not him. It's but I did get that. I was like,
But I did not take that character seriously because of the voice. But the story of the fire spirit it's critical to the
yeah.
story, but it felt less important because of the voice that they chose. If that makes sense. I just kept expecting I don't know. Um what is his Fernando from Saturday Night Live? You look marvelous. You look marvelous. It really took away. Now Christian Bale, I don't know. Are we talking about cast then?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But Christian Bale, I didn't even know it was him.
No, that's it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
But he's an amazing actor, and he blends into whatever role he's doing. So casting him makes sense. You don't want to know who the voice is, in my
Yeah.
opinion. You want to
Yeah.
know who the character is.
Uh-huh. And I think as well in a world like this, you want to be part of that world. You want it to feel they're unique. You want to be sort of taken away somewhere. We're sort of different. Um, and yeah, Billy, the Crystal, and no sort of disrespect whatsoever to him, but his voice there takes you out of that. I mean, I knew there straight away that was him, and yeah, that that one actually really didn't work.
Yeah, I agree. The other I had that was the only problem I had. I think voice wise, like everything else was fine.
Yeah.
Everything was good for me. I had no issues at all. Like I said, I didn't know who anybody was, and then I go back and look later, go, oh, okay. But yeah, they didn't take you away from the film. They kept those other voices kept you in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. So if like us, if there is anyone listening and you've not watched it, um, do watch the Japanese dub with the subtitles on, because
Yep.
it is actually better, and certainly from my point, I watched the film with 100% their focus, all the way there through it, and I think I definitely gained more from watching it that their second their time as well. I think more so because I think with the with the dub version, and I was very gripped by it. Um, I was probably like very gripped with their story. So that was the focus. Then on the second watch, I think, like I say, visually, I start to see a lot more in the film. So, um, and it's really difficult to say, well, what was the best part of the film there visually, because there, to be honest, every frame is absolutely packed with something, really, really gorgeous.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The animation it's ridiculous. It is so beautiful. Like just it's so detailed too. Like there's little things that the corner of the frame or whatever. Like they didn't shortcut anything
No.
like at all, which
Uh
which is
huh.
a which is a feat in itself. Like the further you get away from the center of the frame, like you would expect things to like, well, whatever, we're not going to put any detail in that, but no, they did. Like, yeah, it was amazing. Just the ship itself, like the moving
Mm-hmm.
castle itself,
Yeah.
you could pause it and probably spend 10 minutes on a frame looking at every little
Mm-hmm.
thing that's on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I mean, there's some lovely scenes. I think there's Sophie, who is the main the character, and she's trying to clean the their castle because it is a bit of a mess. So she's given it a sort of scrub up, and there's a couple of scenes with the spiders in it. Now they're just hanging from the threads. I mean, the spiders have no real part in their story, but they were like animated so sort of lovingly. It was like, wow, look at these great spiders that are just hanging about in the background. Yeah.
Why is this important? But everything was important. Like everything mattered.
I think as well, and I think that's what makes it such a great film, because when you're in this, the fantasy world, and it's a world of their magic and their spells, and people can turn in there to other things, and the fire is a their sort of person in itself, and it talks and things like that. It's in this world you need to be able to feel like you're part of it, and then immerse yourself in it, and the quality of that, so that the animation really makes it feel, this this is a world that's actually they're alive. It's a real world in that sense.
It's fully realized. That's the way I look at it. It's like even though they might not explain why something works the way it does, or it's doing what it is, or there's a history behind everything in that world, and they may not tell you on screen,
Mm-hmm.
but you can tell, like, it's not just it's a moving castle. They could have just left it at that, not explain why it moves, why it does what it does. They explain enough about, but you feel like there's a history to that castle. It's not just, oh, it's just a moving castle. Like
Mm-hmm.
even though they don't describe it, there's always history within there. So you can tell that they spent probably more time developing the world than they did the story. Even like there's a whole backstory there. So it's just so much loving, dedicated care. It's just, I don't know, kind of blown away.
Yeah, 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 very much so. It's interesting as well. I mean, obviously, it is based on their book, so the Diana Wynne, the Jones. Now, when I was looking up, so I did a little bit of research in to her. Now, she's written a lot of books. Um, um, there are a few which have also been made for their screen. But one of the interesting things that I found out about her was when she studied at the Oxford, she actually attended their lectures by their CS, their Lewis, and J.R.R. their Tolkien.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, so two other writers of their fantasy who actually their books as well just build worlds so well, worlds that you get lost in.
I just pulled her up here just to see who she is, because I'd never even thought of researching. But wow, I'm gonna have to do a deep dive here. Obviously, she's the inspiration for I don't know if you read her thing, but her inspiration. She's inspired J.K. Rowling, Neil Gaiman,
Yeah.
Terry Pratchett. Like, oh my god, like who are you? I gotta look into this lady. She's like amazing.
Yeah. But
well, okay, there we go. More reading for me to
do. But she herself, she was inspired by, probably the two, so certainly the two, they're sort of British writers who really sort of kicked it all off as well. I mean, so that's absolutely great. You can see there's a sort of legacy a sort of path, as it were, that she's been on that sort of path, and yeah, and what's led to us, getting some of the great, fantasy worlds that we love, they just now as well, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling. I mean, that's one that's captured, the screen as well, and I mean, I'm not a huge fan, but her books and the films have a lovingly sort of realized world, and I can see the way that people like to get lost in there. So
Yep.
and the Howl absolutely does it as well. You can see the world. I love the thought of and one thing that we haven't mentioned actually is the sort of the steampunk
Yes.
their sort of styling. So obviously the sort of castle itself, it's powered by their fire. It's got legs. It walks. It's got sort of doors that lead to all other sort of places. But there's the airships, and there's sort of battleships, which are
Mm.
more than what that world would sort of have. It's got
Yes.
that sort of extra part there to it. Um, and
I'm
I loved that as well. I loved the thought of of that sort of world. It was really
I'm
good.
wondering. So when Howl was written, I'm curious if this was like sort of one of if Diana Wynne Jones was sort of the inspiration for a lot of the steampunk that we saw afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I mean the steampunk qualities of this are like just fascinating. Like I'm just but it wasn't 100% steampunk, but I could see steampunk rising out of the inspiration for this. Maybe
Yeah.
not the film specifically, but the books themselves that came way before, right? So I don't know. And I like how the castle is just. It looks like it's continuously, possibly stumbling.
Hmm.
It's not a perfect science or a perfect machine, but it is. But it just looks like it's just about to fall over a cliff. Like it just looks so unsteady, but it's still plodding and moves. And I don't know. It like how do you come up with that? It's so bizarre. Like I don't know.
it's I think it's a testament to a great writer first of all, and then for the film makers, they to say, wow, how do we visualize this, um but and and to be fair, I think probably the Japanese anime style lends itself there perfectly there to the book. It's the right
Yeah.
marriage going on there. It would be, you would wonder how a Western version would sort of look. Would it be as they good?
Probably not. I think they would remove a lot of the aspects, like a lot of the specific things, and just generalize things more. I think to make it amenable to an American audience, because I think there's a lot about this movie that is too broad for an American audience to understand, because it's not a popcorn film, it's not a Pixar film, it's not a classic Disney animated film. It's not, it doesn't follow tropes that people can identify, like, oh, I know that trope, so I'm going to see this movie. I know that trope, I'm going to see this movie. But it doesn't have that. It's just too big. And generally an American film would tighten, quote unquote tighten it up, and then kind of remove all those things that just give it so much character and personality.
Yeah, haha. And it's funny because there's not a sort of clear cut the villain either. There's not really so there are characters who maybe start off quite sort of dark. Funnily enough, one of the biggest ones, which is they're the witch of the waste,
Hmm.
becomes part of Howell's
Yeah.
their family by the end. You actually,
Yep.
this is a character that you like.
Yep.
Um, I mean, this was the witch that actually made Sophie into an old their woman there for most of the film. But by the end, she is part of the the group, and even in the other witches character who's part of their government, um, they're not out to they sort of defeat her, but by their actions, she actually changes by the end. So it's not a
Hmm.
it's not a it's it's certainly not a standard Hollywood sort of storyline or um or a their sort of denouement either. Is very much its own sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. It's not. It, yeah. There isn't a Darth Vader, or there isn't I don't know, a Bond villain. Like there isn't that. It's just different grays. There's no black and white. It's just multiple versions of gray, and everyone, even Howell himself, he's not a good person, but he's not a bad person either. Like
Yeah.
there's just different shades of gray for everyone, and I think it's probably a bit more realistic,
Yeah.
and that kind
Yeah.
of helps ground it in that reality that we're all shaped by this war that's going on, and we're all doing things that we shouldn't be doing, but we're all trying to be better than we're all trying to be better.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, and I found that such a great, change as well, that there was a good, like there is a the happy ending, as it were,
Hmm.
but it's not all with, they defeated they're the bad guys, as it were. It's actually everybody's realised, oh yeah, right, we don't have to be at war anymore, so that's it.
Yep.
And we're going to stop now, and it's like, yeah, so very different in that sense. Um, I thought I loved actually one of the aspects, and I know you were talking about this because you do some their writing for yourself, and one of the things that really captured me was was the castle. So the castle, it does move. It moves through the countryside. But one of the things that I loved was that there's the doorway,
Mm.
and the dial on it. And when you turn the dial, it's actually it's a fixed door in what looks like the house or a
Yep.
their shop in like various different their sort of towns, so they can walk out and be part of that world, and then go back through the door and be back on the um their castle again. And I loved that. I loved the thought of that sort of magic in it. I just and that really sort of captured me.
That was, yeah, that was actually that was my favorite part. I have a thing with in the books that I write, in everything that I run a lot of Dungeons and Dragons type games, and I do use portals all the
Hmm.
time for everything. It's kind of my trope. It's a Sean trope, but I loved the execution of how it works, like the science slash magic of how it works, and I like the idea, like they're just a shop, and then nobody
Yeah,
knows anything. They're just a shop, and there's a wizard there, and but it's nothing more than that. But I just like that it's against, like, he's this big powerful wizard and all this sort of stuff, but then he's just this little shop owner.
yeah,
Like it and it's I almost think there's something there where it's a metaphor to something that, you know, at our, we can be simple, but we can be complex, and it's just a matter of a switch. And then some people may view us as a particular way, but then you flip the dial on there, and then other people from the other doorway are going to view us in a completely different way, but they're not going to connect the two. Like,
Yeah,
the metaphor of that is just, I don't know, it's inspiring. Like,
I
I
loved
want to
it.
steal so much from this
Yeah.
in my own work.
It's funny as a the Doctor Who fan, which I am. So I
Mm,
love Doctor Who. I love I love all of it. So uh, you know classic, black and white and all of it. I just
mhm.
absolutely love it. And it made me think of that. Funnily enough, so there's this fairly ordinary look in their shop, and you go in it, um, and actually it's a big, massive, castle that they moves around the countryside on its legs, and I was almost a bit like, that's a bit,
That's the TARDIS. Here we
it's
go.
a little bit sort of TARDIS like, yeah, which they really captured me. I loved that.
So now the
And
question is, did Howl come before Doctor Who? The original,
that's good.
like, was this inspiring to the creators of Doctor Who, or like what came first? I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm
That's
really, I'm gonna, we probably can't answer that question here right now, but I'm
no.
gonna be deep diving after this
Yeah,
to dig all
definitely.
this
Yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah. But yeah. It's quite something, and absolutely huge as well. And I think as well, I will probably watch this film again some point in the future, and we'll probably pick up on lots of other bits which I didn't get first time round. I think it was so it was so vast in its their scope, and just seems to work so well.
Yep. I'm think I'm gonna be picking up. There's three novels for Howl's Moving Castle. I think I'm
Uh
gonna
huh.
pick up the first one and just. I'm curious how visual she is in her writing.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm definitely going down that road.
You know what? I think I might actually do the same. I am on the holiday at the end of this week, and that's a perfect chance to actually read a book,
Yes,
because I'm hopeless when it comes to actually reading their novels these days. So yeah, there we go. That's the challenge. Let's do that. So yeah,
I'm
yeah, I'm
writing
going
it
to
down,
order
so now
that
I
as
can't go
well.
back. I'm writing it down so we both can't come back on it now. We have to.
We have to do it, yeah. well, well, what we can do there, Sean, is we can come back and we can do a book, um,
Book review.
yeah, as well for it. So,
That sounds good. That
so,
sounds
there,
great.
so there's the challenge for that. Um, I think one thing as well. So just before summing up, um, and I know this is a big part of your life, but the their music for me, I really loved it. I loved
Oh,
the
yeah.
music there throughout the film,
Mhm.
um, and I must admit the song at the end. Now I didn't know what they were singing,
Yep.
obviously, but that was lovely, and it
Mhm.
almost Sean brought a little the tear to my eye, just as it was
Yep.
playing at the end. I don't know about you.
Yeah. The first thing my daughter said is this is when she really likes a song. The first thing she says is, "Can you put that on my mix? Can you put that on my
Yeah.
mix?" She loved it. She was emotional, like listening, like just she was kind of sitting there and just kind of absorbing it. And then she looked at me and just like, I need this song, Daddy. Like, I really need this song. So she loved it. Then there you go. It's good.
Yeah. And actually, 40 and 50-year-old blokes, it doesn't really matter what we think, to be honest. If you're if your 7-year-old daughter was captured by it, That's
Yeah.
the whole point, isn't it? So,
Sure. Sure.
yeah, um, a big thumbs up there for me. I love this
Yep.
film.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. This was a movie that changed me for because I like as soon as we talked about it, I watched it right away. Like I think that weekend,
uh huh,
and then for the next 2 weeks, I just kept going back to okay. So that part in the movie, like I just kept rewinding and not watching the film, but rewinding it in my head and playing it through in my head again, over and over and over again. And only great films do that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you're absolutely right. The very best films, they stay with you, for weeks after, and you think about them, or you put yourself within that sort of world. You almost think, what would I do if I lived there? Or I was, part of there. What's going on, and absolutely, this film there does it. So,
So this movie was so inspiring that I started world building for the follow up novel to the one I just finished.
uh-huh.
Right after this film, I'm like, okay, I've got everything I need. I got the inspiration I need. I've got the drive, and I just want to create something great. And it came right after watching this film, and that's when I started. I couldn't help myself. I just sat down and just started writing. So
and that,
it was that good.
yeah, yeah, and 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 that's a testament as well, isn't it, to a really great, story. In inspires you to do your own their work as well, isn't it? That's
Oh yeah.
yeah. Uh-huh. So a big thumbs up all round for it. Thank you, Sean. I'm really glad that we did, go for this one. It's been absolutely brilliant, and we were looking for something they to do as well. So we
Yeah, this was perfect.
got the perfect one. Yeah. However, Sean, it's not just writing and watching, the anime now that you will be there doing. Of course, you have your own their podcast. So, would you like to tell us
Absolutely.
all about that?
Sure. It's called the Sean Geek and Fast Fret podcast. So it's me, Sean Geek, and my brother Fast Fret, who's an amazing guitar player, which why he has that nickname. And I come from the more geeky side of things. He comes from the cool side of things. He's the cool guitar player, and we find topics and kind of meet in the middle to discuss things from both of our perspectives. And each week, we find a topic to kind of geek out on and talk about. And I'm usually the one geeking out, and he's usually the person on the street. You know, that's his perspective, the person on the
Yeah.
street. So um and I love my brother to bits, so it's just us hanging out and just having a chat like we do all the time, just we're recording it. And
Yeah.
you can find us our website is seanmcginty.ca, seanmcginity.ca, and or you can look up Sean Geek Podcast anywhere where you listen to your podcast.
And please do. And like you say, I will be able to actually catch up on there a bit more, Sean, when I am on their holiday next week. Um, so I am actually needing there to get up to speed, but I will have ample their time, unless I'm absolutely captivated by their howl, and I need to read all three books. Um, who knows? But anyway, thanks so much, Sean, and thanks
Yes, this
everybody.
was fun.
It's been absolutely brilliant, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Cult Connections. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we would love it if you left a review. Follow us on Twitter at Connections Cult for more fun, share your ideas, and maybe even be on the show. Thank you.